It has the spirit of the Greek dish.
I don't know about that.
It has the spirit. Like it's layered with like a vegetable meat.
Potato a vegetable?
I count it as a vegetable. Some people tell me it's starch, but I think they're wrong. Potato is a vegetable, the most important vegetable. Hey everyone, welcome back to Chef Tyler's Croatian Kitchen, and today we have for you moussaka, which, yes, I know this is a Greek dish and its origins come from the southern tip of the Balkan Peninsula, but it has worked its way up here into Croatia where we have changed it and made it our own. For starters, there is no eggplant in our version, which is integral in the Greek version. Also, we're not using ground lamb, rather ground beef. And actually, it's just beef this time. It's not that mix between beef and pork. While all the ingredients might have changed, the name didn't, and that's why we still call it moussaka, despite it probably not even being remotely similar to the old dish. However, it is ours, and we will carry on and pretend that this is indeed moussaka. So sorry in advance, Greek people.
Potato casserole, more like.
It's it's more, I guess Caitlin said, I guess more like a potato casserole or a lasagna. I also have a pretty funny connection to this dish as my dad was once at my grandma's house, his mom, and every day they're making something like really starch heavy. And my dad was like, "All right, can you please make something with more meat? I can't keep eating pasta, rice, potatoes every single day." So to appease him, moussaka was made. And everyone was like, "See, look, there's more meat in this. This is something good for you." And it was not at all what he wanted. It's good though, and that's why we're making it. And if you haven't had potatoes all day, you can have your potato fix now. I guess there's not much else to say about potato casserole. So let's get into the ingredients, shall we? We have 540 grams of ground beef. I don't know why it's 540 grams, but everywhere here in Croatia, when you go to the food store, they sell ground meat in increments of 540 grams. There must be some reason, however, I've yet to find it out. We have one onion chopped, three cloves of garlic minced, although this is more than three because we are not vampires. I guess this is also another difference from the Greek version. The filling, or the liquid that is going to cook in the oven, is made from sour cream and eggs. If you don't wish to use sour cream, you can of course use a bechamel or just cream instead, but the Croatian way is a mixture of sour cream and eggs. The milk here is just in case we need to add a little bit more liquid into the tin before we put it into the oven to ensure that the potatoes cook through. Salt, pepper for seasoning. This is beef, so I'm going to cook in tallow, but you can also use olive oil or butter. It's all up to you. And of course, the star of this dish, the potatoes. I have here about 1 kilo, maybe that's about 2 pounds, maybe a little bit less, a little bit more, depends on the size of your baking tin. We're using a white potato, which is a starchy potato, and that way once it's cooking, it'll release some of the starches and help thicken up the sauce around it. We're going to cut these into thin slices using a mandolin, and then we're going to parboil them for about 5 to 10 minutes before putting them into the oven. Alternatively, if you have a little bit more time, you can fully cook the potatoes by keeping them whole and then slicing them afterwards. See the potato episode, specifically the potato salad portion, for how we can do that. But when you're in a hurry, just parboil them for about 5 to 10 minutes. It comes out just the same. All right, that's it. Let's get into cutting our potatoes. So to cut these potatoes, I'm going to be using a mandolin. I think many people are very scared of mandolins, probably for good reason, because it is probably one of the more dangerous appliances or tools that you can use in a kitchen. However, I find if you respect the mandolin, it will respect you. I went ahead and scrubbed these before, and I'm going to leave the skin on. However, you are also more than welcome to take the skin off. There's just nutrients in the skin. Using a mandolin, I just usually go for it.
Use the guard. Be a good
So
influence.
sometimes there is a guard. You can use a guard. You can also get a glove to protect your hand. But if you know what you're doing, you should and pay attention, you should be fine. You do kind of want to go quick, which makes it a little bit more dangerous. But what you want to do is get these slices the same thickness throughout. And if you go too slow, you're going to end up shoving it through. There's going to be unevenness in your slice. It's not going to look as good. It's not going to cook the same as every other slice. So how we'll do is we'll just take our potato here at the end and just, once you start getting towards the end, then you want to go maybe a little bit slower. And there's your potato. So once all of our potatoes have been cut, I'm just going to put them directly into a pot that I'm going to fill with cold water, a little bit of salt, and bring it over to the stove to parboil 5 to 10 minutes. While I'm over at the stove, we're going to cook up the onions, garlic, and ground beef. Also, preheat your oven to 200 degrees centigrade or 400 Fahrenheit. So over here at the stove, I have the potatoes coming up to a boil, and here I've thrown in about a tablespoon of tallow. Once again, you can use butter or olive oil or whichever fat that you are choosing. Into that, I'm going to take my onion, and it's not up to temperature yet, but as Marcella Hazan says, it's better to let the onions and oil come up to temperature at the same time. So once all of my tallow melts and this starts to sizzle, I'm going to take the lid and put it on top. This way we're going to sweat the onions without browning them. Very similar to what we did in the zapečený grach or baked beans video. So we're just going to wait now for this to start to sweat, about 5 to 7 minutes, and then we'll move on. Then once our onions have become translucent, we'll just give it a little stir, let all the extra water evaporate, and then we'll add in our garlic. And we'll let this cook for about a minute or until fragrant. And once our garlic is fragrant, we'll go ahead and add in our beef. And once the beef is in, just start to break it up into smaller pieces. And we'll want to cook this until everything is brown, and then a further about 5 minutes. So there's clearly a lot of starch in these potatoes. That's what's bubbling up, but I don't want to have to drain it and put it back in. And as long as it doesn't overflow, it really poses no issue. So just make sure to keep the heat at a good level to keep it cooking, but not overflowing. This needs to cook for about 10 minutes. This needs to boil for about 10 minutes, and somehow I managed to time it perfectly so that once this is done cooking, so will our potatoes. So I'll meet you back when everything is done for our assembly. So after our meat has fully cooked and our potatoes have parboiled, it's time to assemble our moussaka. I also off camera added some salt and pepper into the meat for some seasoning. I have here some olive oil, and you could use hell, you could use butter, but olive oil I find is a little bit easier here because it's already a liquid and we want to grease the pan. So just throw a little bit in, really don't want a lot, and then just turn it all around and try to get the oil all over. If it helps, you can grab a paper towel too, as such. Fold it over a few times like this, and just mix everything around. So get everything a nice, slight layer. You don't want this swimming in oil, you just want a small layer to add for some non-stick. And now it's time to assemble. Take our potato first and put it along the bottom here. We're going to make kind of like a little scale pattern here, so the potatoes are slightly on top of the ones behind them, just like so. We don't want to use some of these small ones at first. The small ones are good for filling in gaps towards the end. And after your layer of potatoes, go and add in your meat. And as before, we'll spread all the meat around to make a nice even layer. After the meat, we'll add a layer of potatoes once more. And just keep going like this until you reach the top of your tin. Potato, meat, potato, meat, potato, and always end on potato. And here is our finished layer. So I do have some leftover meat and potatoes. The ground beef you can use in any other dish, maybe tacos if you'd like. Or what you could do is save it and the potatoes, and then tomorrow you can make a little mini version of this, put the meat at the bottom, top with the potatoes, and then bake it again. Or you could even like mash the potatoes and then put that on top too, kind of like a shepherd's pie. Okay, now we're going to make the filling. I have 2 eggs that I'm going to crack into this bowl. That's one, and there's a bit of shell in there. So if you get a little bit of shell in when you crack your eggs, just take the shell again, and you can easily scoop out the shell. It is so much easier than trying to use your fingers. But like that piece, if it wasn't in the shell, or sorry, in the egg, it's fine. A lot of people say to take the egg and break it on a flat surface to reduce the risk of that, but I say I don't care. and I do it anyway. After we have our eggs in the bowl, I'm just going to take the whisk, give it a quick little mix together, just to break up the yolk really before we start adding in the sour cream. This is 200 milliliters. I'm just going to take the whole thing, spoon it out into the bowl. Like I said, if you want to use regular cream or make a bechamel, probably even better, you can in lieu of the sour cream. Once all the sour cream is in, we'll start to mix the eggs and sour cream together until you come to one homogeneous liquid. Caitlin asked a great question if we should be seasoning the sauce, and the answer is no, because everything else in here is seasoned. The potatoes cooked in salted water, the meat has salt and pepper in it already, so there's no need to salt or pepper the sauce or the filling. Yes, if you want to go ahead, but I think it might be too salty if you're salting every component. So we'll just take our filling, pour it on top, and shake the tin. So the purpose of the shaking is to make sure that the filling gets down into the bottom layers. And once it's all settled in, just take a paper towel and wipe around the edge so that the filling doesn't burn. If it seemed too thick, that's when you'd want to add in the milk, but this looks pretty good to me, so I'm going to leave it as is. I'm now going to put it into the oven and let it cook for 45 to 50 minutes, or until you can take a toothpick and it goes through the potatoes without resistance. And this is the point where my mic decided to die, so here's Tyler from the future giving you the spark notes. And once moussaka is finished cooking, take it out of the oven and let it rest on the counter while it cools. If while it's cooking the top gets to be a little too brown, you can always put some aluminum foil on top to prevent further browning. After it is cooled, you can cut the moussaka and serve. And of course we have to give our taste for Greg. It was incredibly good. The sour cream is not sour at all after it's done baking. In fact, if I didn't know it was sour cream, probably would not have even guessed that's what it was. The layering of the potatoes and the meat gives a perfect contrast between each and every bite. The potatoes soft and creamy with just a little bit of crust on the top layer. And the meat is still so juicy, everything complements each other perfectly. So there we have Moussaka, Dobatek. My cousin, when I used to live with him, he bought like a 5 kilo bag of potatoes and was like, "You have to use potatoes." I was like, "Okay." And then he, of course, puts the potatoes into a completely different room. He was like, "It's cool and dark over there, and they won't go bad." So they're in this completely other room. I obviously forget about them, and I guess he does too. Because like 3 months later, I'm going in that closet. I'm like, "Oh,
You got
our
growing
potatoes," and they're like all growing and mushy. And I was like, "Well, there went that."